We had just finished Rumor Weed, and I was very overtly trying to build the studio towards doing Jonah already. In fact, I had wanted to roll in Jonah right out of Rumor Weed, and we weren't ready, so we had to wait another year. On King George and the Ducky, we intentionally tried to make it very simple from a story point of view, with just a few locations, so that we could then really concentrate on those locations. So if you look at the locations, they're by far the most detailed, beautiful locations, modeling and lighting that we had ever done up to that point. We did something that we've never done before or since, and that is retell a Bible story that we can't let on that we're retelling. Because it's the story of David and Bathsheba, which, as you know, is not exactly a G-rated story. But it's a powerful story. It's an immensely powerful story at the end, where King David is confronted by the prophet Nathan, about his sin, about, look what you did. And Nathan sets it up amazingly, not by telling him directly, you did this and this was wrong, but by telling him a story. He comes in and tells him the story of a man with a sheep, and a poor man with one sheep and a rich man with many sheep, who took the poor man's one sheep to serve for dinner to some guests. And it just infuriates King David. And then there's just this, one of the strongest moments, I think, in the Old Testament, where he says, you're that man. And so we wanted to tell that story because it's a powerful example of selfishness and pride. And but obviously it's like a PG-13 film, maybe, depending how you shoot it, maybe R. So we had to come up with a completely different context for telling the story. And someone had written in with the idea of, why don't you do this, as King David and the Ducky.
It was just a really great concept. What if we paralleled the story of David and Bathsheba, with a topic, that's not really suitable for kids, but with a theme about not being selfish that is really great for kids.
We took it out of biblical times, put it in medieval times, made it King George, just made it kind of a classic fairy tale setting, and it became very interesting to watch people watch it and try to see when they picked up, or if they picked up, on the fact that we were retelling the story of David and Bathsheba with rubber ducks.
King George was our first production on new software, on Maya. It was an interesting transition because we also had just moved as a company. So we moved, we had hired a good number of people, and we had a brand new software we were all learning to work with.
It was a really exciting time because the company was growing. We were moving into this new space, and King George sort of came in the middle of that. It happened really fast too. I remember, we didn't have time to do the standard concept that we normally do with the show. So all the concept work was given to the modelers. And the modelers loved it because they got to go in and invent everything themselves. And then the storyboarding was done by Todd Carter. Just one guy boarded the whole thing, and it was actually his first assignment at Big Idea.
King George and the Ducky was a fun show to do. We had just finished Larry Boy and the Rumor Weed a couple months before that. Big show, big score, fairly big orchestra. And it was fun to come back to a more intimate setting. It's kind of a nostalgic VeggieTales feel. A smaller orchestra, smaller music, but a lot of fun stuff in there. We used a lot of in-house musicians. Adam, our audio engineer, plays French horn and percussion. We got him involved. Shar Jackson was playing cello. Heather Finch was playing violin. And it's fun to use what you've got and use that as your palette and say, okay, here's the challenge, here's the framework, what can we do with this?
I thought it'd be really fun to have, Larry, doing this tango with a manatee. But that I combined that with an idea that I had years and years ago about Larry watching different types of things on TV that he shouldn't be watching, basically. And so one of the things that he was watching was a endangered species cooking show. And so I started writing it originally as albino manatee. And they're a curious mammalian sensation with a, here, let me think about this. They're an aquatic mammalian sensation with a curious lack of pigmentation. First you scoop them from the river, then to serve them up for dinner, you just sing this little song for me. So that wasn't going to work because that was a little bit too off the edge. And so, but I still thought this idea of Larry, watching a soap opera, might work. So he's just watching this completely ridiculous soap opera, just a total waste of time.
Mike, he has no problem with getting up and acting his things out, which a good director should. And I remember we were having a studio meeting, and one part of the studio meeting was to talk about the project coming up, which was King George and the Ducky. And then Mike got up and presented the next silly song, which was Endangered Love.
I remember when I first pitched that idea to the animators, I brought my daughter has a big stuffed polar bear, and I'm walking, on the streets of Chicago, and I'm passing this construction site. Just me and a big fluffy teddy bear, and I got a couple of cat calls from construction workers.
And he got up in front of everybody, and he had a little tape with some, rough music worked out, and literally acted out and did his dancing and what he thought maybe tango would look like, and sang, and then would play the tape recorder, and just the whole antics of him up there doing this. And he was being very serious about it, while everybody in the room was just cracking up, watching him dance with a stuffed polar bear. And we knew right away this is going to be a great silly song.
Obviously, the humor is not in the music itself, it's in the words, it's in the story, and I leave that up to Mike. So if I can bring a legitimacy to the background music, I believe that's going to make the comedy that much more humorous. So we wrote a legitimate tango, and that was a real challenge. It took a while, but it was very rewarding. We used a friend of mine, Roddy Chong, who actually plays violin. You've probably seen him on TV. He's toured with Shania Twain and Celine Dion and DC Talk and Jars of Clay, and brought him in, and he played the violin parts on it. So it was a fun connection to make there, to bring him in and play on that.
Tom Danon and I animated Endangered Love. Mike brought in a tape of some tango dancing, and it's just a lot of shoulders and kind of whipping your head around, and those very sultry kind of looks, but that's about it. I mean, you don't have any arms or legs to mess with, so you let his cucumber body do all the dancing, all the talking. There's one moment where Larry's dancing with the manatee, and he goes to dip her, and he leans a little too far and falls down out of the shot. And Mark Vulcano and I were going around about the best way to act this one out. And he said, well, just think about Clouseau, the way he falls out of the camera, and then they added a little shake to it to give it a little more realism, and then he just pops back up and kind of looks around like, hey, anybody see that? Okay, keeps on dancing. That's my favorite shot.
That was one of the videos where we started working more with the thinking character, and having the pupils just move a little bit, or just kind of shift, if you will, ever so slightly, just over a frame or two, which would show the audience's character's thinking. And we started doing that a little bit more at that point, and definitely started pushing that more and more as we got on into the other videos. And it's something I really wanted to see happen a lot when we got into Jonah.
Well, I didn't learn about this till it was already printed and out the door and everything, but the production manager pointed out that one of the scenes they animated was King George, where he's standing in front of the portrait of his dad. And in the previous shot, he had just changed out of his towel into his royal robe, and then he hops off the screen and hops into the next shot, and he's still wearing his towel. So, I take the hit for that one. And then, he hops off the screen and he's back in his robe. So, just a little something to watch for. It's way down near the bottom of the screen, so it's not that big a deal.